Welcome to the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. Go to our website, thesportsangle.com. Check out all the articles that we have on there. We did an article recently talking about the Sacramento Kings and how they have a bright future in the NBA. So go to our website, thesportsangle.com. Check out all the content we have on there. We also have a list of all the guests we have brought onto Sports Angle over the 700 episodes we have done. So definitely go check out that guest list on thesportsangle.com. Also, for all the people who are not able to watch our show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the sites we put the Sports Angle on, go to our website, thesportsangle.com. We have a video link there, and you can watch all of our shows on sportsangle.com. Also, go to all of our social media. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on that notification bell to not miss any episode. And while you're at it, go to PRConnectionsRadio.com and go to their social media at PR Connections Radio and like, share, and subscribe to their content as well. They put out fantastic content on PR Connections Radio. And also go to all our audio links. We are on all the major platforms, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, all the major places you can get your audio links. We are on there as well. Just type in The Sports Angle, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on notification bell. So this has been a fun month of August, I'll say that. Going from doing our NFL preview show, we broke down the NFL season, to where we talked about MLB, the MLB trade deadline. We did a recap on that. That was incredible. Man, it was a fantastic situation we did with the MLB trade deadline to the NFL season preview. Man, it's been an exciting month of August here on Sports Angle. I also have to mention, and I got to give a lot of credit to the Las Vegas Aces. We recently went to a game here on Sports Angle, went to the Michelob Ultra Arena here in Las Vegas. It was an incredible game. I got to give a lot of respect to the Las Vegas Aces. They are by far the best team in the WNBA. If they don't win another championship, I will be surprised. But just had to very quickly give a shout out to the Las Vegas Aces. Keep doing what they're doing. Amazing team there. And I also want to mention Las Vegas Aviators, which is right behind me here. They also went to a game recently. I love their Sunday games. They do their throwback night where they give tribute to the Las Vegas Stars, which was the original name of the Las Vegas Aviators. Those are fantastic, a lot of fun. In fact, if you haven't been to Las Vegas Ballpark and if you haven't been to an Aviators game in the last 4 years, you are missing out. So I just want to give a lot of credit there. And we are going to very quickly do a station identification here for PR Connections Radio. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this quick station ID on PRConnectionsRadio.com.
PR Connections Radio presents
You cannot forget to do the station ID, to play the bumper, to let everybody know about PR Connections Radio and what the show is being presented by. Now, I also will say, since we've been doing Sports Angle for 4 years now, I also want to give a shout out to all the guests who have been on here. I mean, through 700 episodes, we have had Abner Kadabner out there in Pocatello, Idaho. We had Vegas Mike. We had Vegas Karen. And all these amazing people come on the show. We've also had Josh Bailey from Stay Tuned Live. We had Dennis Holmes from Talk Your Ish. You've had Andre Robinson. You have all these amazing people who have come on the show in the past. There's so many people. I can't name all of them. That's why if you go to our guest list on the sportsangle.com, we've had a bunch of amazing guests on there. And, man, it's been a lot of fun. Now, should the NFL make changes to the divisions? This has been a great conversation piece that I've been wanting to discuss here on the Sports Angle for a long time. Now, to set up the premise, what is a reason for why the NFL would even have to make a change to a division? What would be a reason for why the NFL would need to change it up, would need to actually make some changes to their current divisional format? So their current divisional format, you have the AFC East, AFC North, AFC South, AFC West, and then on the opposite, you have NFC East, NFC North, NFC South, and NFC West. It's a very simple format, 8 divisions, 4 teams in each, 32 teams in the NFL. It's a very good and solid format. I also have to keep in mind that this has been since 2002. We have been doing for 2 decades at this point, this exact divisional format. So a lot of us have been comfortable. A lot of people are used to the format we have now, and that is the divisions that we have currently today. But just because we have these divisions does not mean it is perfect. I want everyone to keep in mind what the old format used to be. Before 2002, and a lot of people who are old heads, you already know about this, but for people who are new, you may not be remembering. So before 2002, you used to have the AFC East, AFC Central, AFC West, and then NFC East, NFC Central, and NFC West. And the reason why that got changed was because they wanted to break up the divisions. You used to have 5 teams in the East. Then you would have 7 teams in the Central. You'd have 5 teams in the West. It was very clustered. It didn't really lack any type of situation. It was very messy. And there really wasn't any there wasn't really any actual stuff going on there. So back in 2001, based on all of the problems that format had, they changed it up to divisions we have now. And there's a lot of football fans who like the current divisions, but then on the opposite end, there are people who don't like the current divisions. There are people who are not a fan of the way it is formatted. They believe that there are certain divisions that are favored over other divisions in the NFL. There are certain divisions who are being favored and actually are being more cared about in the NFL than others. So, what could be a reason for changing the NFL divisions? Well, there's 2 ways. 1, expansion, and 2, relocation. Keep in mind, relocation wasn't the reason why it happened in 2002, but it could be the reality. Because back in 1995, when the Cleveland Browns were relocated to Baltimore, that's when talks started of having relocation. And expansion is what actually caused the 2002 divisional changes. Because the Houston Texans, who were an expansion team, was brought into the NFL, and since they added one more team, they had to change up the divisions. You also had the Carolina Panthers, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you had the Baltimore Ravens also be added in during that decade prior. So let's go down this avenue very quickly, why don't we? So if the NFL did change their divisions, would it be due to relocation or would it be due to expansion? So if you go down the relocation route, which 2 teams could it be? Which 2 teams could cause the divisions to change? Well, the obvious one is the one that so many people have penciled in, and it is the Jacksonville Jaguars moving over to London. Because if you have the Jacksonville Jaguars playing in London, that is going to cause some problems for the so-called AFC South. Because keep in mind, the city of London and the country of England is nowhere near the South. It wouldn't be anywhere near Houston, Texas. It wouldn't be anywhere near the Indianapolis, Indiana. And it definitely wouldn't be anywhere near Nashville, Tennessee. So if the Jacksonville Jaguars move to London, that would cause a problem in terms of divisions, and you would not have the London Royals be playing in the AFC South. That could be the first part. Or the second team that could potentially cause this is we have been hearing a lot of talks over the last few years that there is a team that wants to get a new stadium. There is a team that desperately wants to get a new venue. They want a new headquarters. They want new buildings, new facilities. And if they don't get their way, they could maybe talk about moving somewhere else. And the team that I am talking about is a team that a lot of people couldn't even imagine leaving. A team that a lot of people think, you know what, they have a multi-time MVP. They've won 2 Super Bowls recently. There's absolutely no way that they are going to get moved. There's no way they could be relocated. But hear me out. The Kansas City Chiefs have been playing at Arrowhead Stadium for over 50 years now. And it is no secret that not just the Kansas City Royals, but the Kansas City Chiefs have been wanting to get a new stadium. They want to get a new area. They want to get a new venue. Also, keep in mind, Kauffman Stadium and Arrowhead Stadium share a same kind of situation. Where they are in distance is not that far off. So, is it really insane to say that if Kansas City doesn't get a new stadium, that if Kansas City doesn't get a place to replace Arrowhead Stadium, that they wouldn't relocate and go someplace else? Is it really that insane of an idea to think that Clark Hunt and the family estate of Lamar Hunt, that they would leave Kansas City and go someplace else? I mean, keep in mind that if you would have asked fans about a decade ago, could you imagine the San Diego Chargers moving to LA? A lot of people wouldn't have said it. If you had told somebody 20 years ago that the greatest show on turf, the St. Louis Rams, would be going to LA, a lot of people wouldn't think that is a good idea. And for anybody who's an Oakland Raiders fan, if you had told them back in the 90s after they moved back to Oakland that by the 2020s they'd be playing in Las Vegas out of all places, they would have laughed at you. So it is not an insane idea to say that the Kansas City Chiefs, if they don't get a new stadium to replace Arrowhead, that Kansas City could move on. But where would they go? Where would Kansas City go that would warrant changing a division? Because if you send them to Oakland, if you send them to San Diego, if you send them to Salt Lake City, if you send them someplace in the West Coast, well, there's really no change for the division. Kansas City is staying in the same division. No, in order for Kansas City to have to change up the entire divisional format, they would have to go either up north or down south. And there's 2 perfect places to go into the south. The first one would be going to a completely different country, and that is Mexico City. Keep in mind, the NFL loves Mexico City. They have played games in Mexico City. There's a good fan base there. They have a really nice stadium, 160,000 people at that stadium in Mexico City. And the NFL has been wanting to expand outside the United States for a long time. So that could be the first possibility. Send them down to Mexico City. Or add another team in Florida, cause more of a logjam in Florida, and send them down to a place like Orlando. Because obviously the NFL has an obsession with Florida. They've done that for the past 2 decades. But let's get back to reality. If Kansas City wants to get a new stadium and Kansas City doesn't give it to them, I would say send them down to Mexico City and send the Jacksonville Jaguars out to London. That way, you have 2 solutions to a problem. Sending Kansas City down to Mexico City would fix the problem with the AFC South. However, Jacksonville going to London would not. So that would be the first way that you would change up the division. That'd be by relocation. And that would be by Jacksonville going to London or Kansas City going to Mexico City. That would force a change in the divisions, and that would cause something to happen. The second option would be expansion. And there's a lot of people who don't like to talk about this. There are some people who want to keep the NFL the way it is. They want to keep the teams exactly the way it is. They don't want to expand. They don't want to add teams. But let's address facts here. This is a business, right? NFL, at the end of the day, is a business. And if you can add 2 new teams, which the NFL has been doing, by the way, they add 2 teams at a time. You had Houston and Cleveland. You had Baltimore and Carolina. You had Jacksonville. You had all these teams that got added 2 at a time in the NFL. You had Carolina and Jacksonville. You had Cleveland and Houston. The NFL, in the span of 5 years, would add 2 teams to their expansion. Now, what cities they could be, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. We've already talked about it here on the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com. Heck, we even did a show with Marcus Betts from Alphabet's football show back in the day where we talked about this exact topic and what cities could be on the NFL expansion. Go watch that show, by the way. It's back in our archives. Go to our YouTube channel, The Sports Angle. We did that show with Marcus Betts from the Alphabet's football show. It was an amazing show. So regardless if it is relocation or if it is expansion, that would warrant NFL changing their divisions. But how would you switch up the NFL divisions? Well, there are 4 possible ways to switch up the NFL divisions. There's 4 ways to really switch it up. And the first way would be to go back to what it was before 2002. Okay? Go back to the original divisional format in the NFL. All right, let me explain what I mean by this. Back in the good old days of 2001, you had the East, you had the Central, and you had the West. And then on the NFC, you had the East, you had the Central, and you had the West. Now, the reason why I say that could be the first option is that if you add 2 new teams and you make it 34 teams in the NFL, well, it's not insane to say that you could have 6 divisions in the NFL. But what you would have to work out is figure out who's going to get the lopsided division, right? Who is going to get the lopsided team? Because the way that you would do it and the way you would work it out is how you did back in the day. Like I mentioned before, the AFC East and the NFC East had 5 teams each. You also had the AFC West and the NFC West, which had 5 teams each. It was only the AFC Central and only the NFC Central that had a huge difference in formatting. So what you would do in the first option is go back to what it used to be, and that is get rid of the North and get rid of the South and have them again be the East, the Central, and the West. Now, you could do the legacy ones, and here's what I mean by this. You could have the old AFC East, which means you had the Patriots, the Jets, the Bills, the Colts, and the Dolphins. You could possibly do that. Similar to the West, you could possibly bring back the old school AFC West, and that is have the Raiders, the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Chiefs, but have the Seahawks be brought back to the AFC. A lot of people forget that the Seahawks before 2002 was in the AFC, not the NFC. It's very similar to Milwaukee Brewers in baseball. They used to be in the American League, and then they had expansion, and they forced them to go over to the NL. So that is a situation you could have. You could have the old school rivalries. However, I have a feeling certain people wouldn't like that option. I have a feeling certain people wouldn't want to have that scenario. And by the way, I appreciate you for being in the chat. Send them to Kansas. All right, so if they can't get a new stadium in Missouri, boom, send them over to Kansas. I like your thinking. But back to what we're talking about. Should the NFL make changes to their divisions? Well, I said the first way you could do it is go back to the old school divisions and have it be the East, the Central, and the West. Have it be in the AFC and the NFC. Bring back the old school rivalries the NFL had back in the day. I mean, I remember the NFC Central, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers used to play the Bears on a consistent basis, and you had the Packers, the Vikings, and the Lions, the Buccaneers randomly being there. You could have that as well. But what I believe would actually work for the NFL would be the second way. And the second way to make these divisions work for the NFL would be to go by geography. And more importantly, go by the nearest location possible. Be able to group up the 4 closest teams geography-wise and put them in the same division. Now, a lot of people are going to make the argument, well, Ian, the NFL already does this. Well, what's the big concern? The NFL already puts the teams that are nearest geography-wise in the same division. What's the problem with that? I'm going to point the finger and say, no, they don't, because you have the Dallas Cowboys playing in the NFC East. I mean, the Houston Texans play in the AFC South. The Cowboys, for some reason, play in the NFC East. So geography-wise, it wouldn't make sense. So as I'm talking about, should the NFL make changes to their divisions, the first one, as I said, bring back the historic divisions, the East, the Central, and the West. The second way is make it by geography. Kind of borrow a little bit of a playbook from the NBA and make your divisions geography-based. But if you're a football fan, you don't like that, okay? And if you don't like that second option, if you don't want to have a geography-based division, well, I have one more for you. And that is to make the divisions the Metro, the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Central. Yes, that's right. I'm going over to the hockey world, and I'm borrowing the NHL version of their divisions, okay? I'm saying that the NFL wants to have the divisions change. Then you adapt from the NHL, and you have 2 divisions in each one. So you have 8 teams in here, 8 teams here, 8 teams this one, and then 8 teams in the last one. Now, the way I would do this is very similar to the NHL, is that I would wrap them all up in terms of rivalries. So the way that I would do this, and the way I would love to talk about this, is have the Pacific be all 8 of the Western-based teams in the NFL. So I'm talking about the 49ers, the Chargers, the Raiders, the Rams. I'm talking about the Cardinals, I'm talking about the Broncos. That would be an amazing way to have the NFL change up their divisions, is to make it based off of where you are placed. Now, the Central, that would be a lot more complicated to talk about. But the Metro and the Atlantic would be very simple. You're essentially adapting the East, and the North, and the South, and you're picking and choosing based off of rivalries. So at the end of the day, if you copy the NHL, that actually would make the NFL divisions a lot more simpler and would actually make it better in terms of long term. So, Josh, my good friend for Stay Tuned Live, I actually shouted you out earlier in the show. Josh Bailey, the reason why the Cowboys are in the East are because of rivalries. All right, because of their rivalry with the Eagles, their rivalry with the Redskins, the Commodores, and their rivalry with the Giants. That is why the Cowboys are in the East. I like hockey, great idea. Hope NFL takes it as great idea. Right, that's what I'm saying, is as somebody who's a big hockey fan, their divisions make the most sense out of all the major 4 teams. Like, out of all the 4 major sports, the NHL makes so much sense because the Metro is in the Metropolitan. That makes a lot of sense. The Atlantic, all the teams are near the Atlantic Ocean. Makes a lot of sense. The Pacific, all 8 of those teams are by the Pacific Ocean. Brilliant. And the Central is all the teams in the Midwest area and the South a little bit, but mostly in the Central, the Midwest. I would say that the way the NFL should make changes to their divisions, that would be the best one. However, I have a foolproof way. And this one would be so much better, would be so much more simpler, and is my personal recommendation. And the 4th and final way the NFL should make changes to their divisions is you combine the East, the North, the South, and the West. I'll say it once again for all people in the back. Maybe you turn up your radio for all people in their car driving. I say the fourth and final way the NFL changes their division is you combine the AFC East and the NFC East, and you just make it the East Division. You take the AFC North and the NFC North, and you combine it. You make it just the North. You take the AFC South, NFC South. You combine it. You make it South. And to finish this off, you take the AFC West and the NFC West, and you combine it, and you make it the West. The reason why this is actually my preferred way to do it is because not only do you keep rivalries, not only do you keep feuds and all of the fan bases together, but in terms of geography, a lot of it starts to line up. If you do it based off geography, those divisions start to make more sense. And even if you want to go based off historical, a lot of these divisions would then have old rivalries brought back into the spotlight. You would have the Raiders and the 49ers once again. You would have the Seahawks and the Chiefs once again. So the fourth way to make the changes to the NFL divisions is you combine the divisions. You combine the East, the North, the South, and the West. I want to know from everybody who's watching this show, everyone who is around the world watching the Sports Angle, which one would you do? Which one would you prefer as a fan of the NFL? I'll do all of them once again. The first one is go back to historic divisions, which is the East, the Central, and the West. The second one is to do the NBA and make it geography-based. The third one is copy the NHL and have it be the Metro, the Atlantic, the Central, and the Pacific. And the fourth and final one is that you combine the East, the West, the North, and the South, and you have 8 teams in each division. So I want to know from everybody watching around the world, which one would you do as a fan? Which one do you prefer as a division in the NFL? And I'm also going to show it, by the way, for everybody watching around the world. Hey, Dalton, what's up, my friend? So I will say for everybody watching all around the world, I will say that one more time. As we're talking about, should the NFL make changes to the divisions? The first one is go back to historic divisions, go back to what it was before they changed the divisions originally back in 2002. The second way, make it geography-based, have a Southwest, Northwest, Northeast, have a Central, have an Atlantic, kind of copy a format from the NBA. The third way is copy the NHL and have it be the Atlantic, Metro, Pacific, and Central. And the last one, and the one I would say is my angle, is combine the East, the West, North, and South. Now, somebody asked in the chat on Twitter, by the way, shout out to everybody on Twitter at Sports Angle on PR. All right, what would the divisions be in terms of the NFL? And I think this is probably talking about if I combine the East, the West, the South, and the North together, who would be in the AFC and who would be in the NFC? That's an excellent question. I'm going to answer this to you very simply. I would have the East and the North be in the AFC, and I would have the South and the West be in the NFC. Essentially, what I would do is I would kind of create kind of a line down the map of the United States, and I would have the upper northeast corner be the AFC, and then I'd have the lower corner of the United States be the NFC. I'd break it up in terms of geography-wise. But that is kind of the way I would answer that question, is you would have the East and the North be in the AFC, and you have the South and the West be in the NFC. But great question, by the way. Now, as we are talking about the NFL here on the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. I also want to say to everybody watching around the world, I appreciate everybody for helping out and being a part of the show. I definitely appreciate everyone around the world who takes time out of their Friday to listen and or watch your host Ian Rakelli do this show. And I'm going to do very quickly a little sip of your drink here. Also, everybody watching around the world, don't forget to drink plenty of water and make sure that you drink safely. Now, back to the conversation at hand. For the last half hour, we talked about the NFL making changes in our divisions. But now it is time to get into, will the AFC Championship game be the real Super Bowl? And before anyone freaks out, before anybody wants to yell at me, let me explain what I mean by this. The way I'm going to explain it is, will the AFC Championship game have the real best two teams in the NFL? Will the AFC Championship game be the actual Super Bowl where you see the two best teams in the NFL going at it? Yes, I understand the Super Bowl is the actual Super Bowl. I'm not saying the AFC Championship game is going to replace it. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that the AFC Championship game could be Kansas City versus Cincinnati. Your AFC Championship game could be Kansas City versus Buffalo. It could be Cincinnati versus Buffalo. It could be Buffalo versus New York. It could be Cincinnati versus New York. It could be Kansas City versus Cleveland. It could be whoever. But what my point I'm wanting to make here, could the AFC Championship game consist of the best two quarterbacks in the NFL? Could it be Mahomes versus Burrow? Could it be Mahomes versus Allen? Could it be Mahomes versus Rodgers if all these Jets fans don't stop talking about it? My point to this is that the answer to the question is yes. I truly believe the AFC Championship game is going to be the real best matchup in the NFL. You are going to see the best two teams in the NFL competing in the AFC Championship game. Heck, you can maybe see Kansas City versus Jacksonville, as Thomas mentions here in the chat. My point is that the NFC is very weak at the moment. All right, a lot of people don't want to address it. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, but I will. It's a sports angle. It's what I do. The NFC is hilariously weak. And this has a lot to do with free agency, has a lot to do with trades, quarterbacks. A lot of superstar quarterbacks are no longer in the NFC. And there is an abundance of superstar quarterbacks in the AFC. I mean, heck, when we did our top 10 quarterbacks list, 8 of the top 10 quarterbacks were in the AFC. That kind of explains it there. And I will say that the last 5 years, the AFC Championship game has been by far better than the NFC Championship game has been. Regardless if it was Brady versus Manning, regardless if it was Flacco versus Brady, regardless if it was even a team like back in 2018, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New England Patriots, even that game was better than what we had on the opposite side. The AFC Championship game over the last half decade, heck, even I'm going to go a decade from now, it has been more entertaining, more exciting. It has been more passionate. It has even been better in terms of on-field play. The AFC Championship game has been for a while now the marquee. It has been the best performing game in the championship game, and it hasn't even been remotely close. And Thomas, I know you're an Eagles fan. Hey, I'm a Chicago Bears fan, but I will be brutally honest here. When is the last NFC Championship game that was actually good? Like, when was there a last competitive NFC Championship game where you could actually say it even rivaled what the AFC Championship game was doing? Because I can make a valid argument on this show that it has been a minute since the NFC Championship game hasn't been a blowout. It has been a minute since the NFC Championship game hasn't been a runaway contest and the team is going to the Super Bowl regardless. At least on the AFC side, it's been competitive. On the AFC side, at least it has been entertaining to watch. And see, Thomas, you put I don't know in the chat, and my point exactly. The NFC Championship game since 2015 has been a joke. I mean, I could talk about Carolina versus Arizona. That was boring. I could talk about 2016 and how Atlanta absolutely dismantled Green Bay. I could talk about 2017, about the fact that that one was absolutely boring and dreadful to watch. I mean, yes, I know you're an Eagles fan, by the way, so 2017, you probably enjoyed that. For me, it was boring because Minnesota had nothing for Philadelphia. And you know what, Thomas? I'm glad you agree to that because it's just the facts. The facts is, for the last decade, the NFC Championship game has been a snooze fest. You watch at noon. And the AFC Championship game has been the exciting moneymaker it has been at night. So, will the AFC Championship game be the real Super Bowl? My answer is yes. You are going to see the real best two teams in the NFL competing not in the Super Bowl, but you're going to see the real best two teams in the NFL competing head-to-head in the AFC Championship game. Now, is it at Arrowhead Stadium? We'll have to wait and see. Is it at Highmark Stadium or whatever the heck it's called in Buffalo? We'll have to wait and see. Will it be in Cincinnati? Will it be at Paul Brown Stadium? We'll have to wait and see. But my point is, for everyone watching this show right now, the AFC Championship game will have the actual best of the best going at it. It's not going to be the AFC versus the NFC. The NFC Championship game is not going to be great. It's probably going to be a blowout. It's going to be a stinker. The NFC Championship game is not going to be anywhere near entertaining as the AFC Championship game will be. And I'll say to everyone watching the show right now, if you disagree with my notion, if you disagree with my premise, go in the chat down below. Go on Twitter. Go on to hashtag the Sports Angle. Go at Sports Angle on PR. Because the AFC Championship game has been leaps and bounds 100 times better than the NFC Championship game has been for a while now. And to me, the NFC Championship game will be underwhelming. All right, it's not going to be cooked correctly. Whereas the AFC Championship game, that will be a medium well steak. All right, it's going to have butter on it. You have your knife and fork. You're going to cut through it. You're going to eat that steak. It's going to be a delicious meal. And that's the AFC Championship game. Whereas the NFC Championship game, they're just putting it in the microwave, warming it up for a little bit, and then you're going to go eat it that way. So, as we are talking about the AFC Championship game and it being the real Super Bowl, it being the real best matchup in the NFL, I want to know from people watching the show, has there really been a great NFC Championship game the last 10 years? I mean, I was kind of starting this trend back in 2015, kind of starting all the way down to 2018. But for real, we have not had a great NFC Championship game in a minute. And I mentioned 2015, Carolina obliterated Arizona, wasn't even close. I mentioned 2016, Atlanta absolutely took Green Bay behind the woodshed, took it out like Old Yeller. 2017, Philadelphia made a mockery of Minnesota, really showed that Minnesota shouldn't have been there. 2018, that one is always going to be controversial. New Orleans fans still hate it to this day, but even that game was underwhelming compared to what the AFC Championship game was earlier in the day. The 2019 NFC Championship game, yeah, you did have some good moments there, but at the end of the day, it was also a situation where San Francisco had it wrapped up. They knew they were going to win that, and it was done and over with. 2020, Green Bay couldn't get out of his own way. Tampa Bay absolutely obliterated them, but he also had a lot of mistakes on the officiating side. It wasn't that great to watch. In 2021, you had a situation where the LA Rams, and they were taking on their team out there in San Francisco. It was okay. It was decent, but it wasn't a great championship game. The Rams kind of had that wrapped up. And in 2022, you also had a situation where, unfortunately, Philadelphia didn't even have to try. I mean, San Francisco was having their running back, Christian McCaffrey, be in the game at one point. So, I will mention to everybody watching around the world, when it comes to the NFC Championship game, and it's the last time I'll talk about it before I move on, the NFC Championship game has not been relevant in a decade. It hasn't been great, hasn't been fantastic. It has been underwhelming at best. Now, moving over, which rookie quarterback will have the most success in the NFL? And this is going to be a short-term question, and it's going to be a long-term question here on Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. So we're going to start this out with the first overall pick. Let's talk about Bryce Young, the guy out of Carolina. Now, short-term wise, I think he will have a lot of success. Short-term success, Carolina, I think he will definitely help them in the short term. But long-term, though, is Bryce Young really going to be the guy in Carolina? Is Bryce Young long-term with his size and his ability? And are they really going to trust Bryce Young to get the job done? Is he going to be a guy that Carolina is going to depend on for a decade plus? I don't know about that. I don't know if in terms of long-term stability, if he is going to be the guy in Carolina. I don't know if he's going to be someone that they're going to trust and depend on when it matters the most. Now, I will say that in terms of his ceiling, I think Bryce Young has the most success in terms of ceiling. All right, I think by year 3, year 4, I think that Bryce Young is going to have a good start to his career. But let me answer what the question is. The question is, which quarterback will have the most success in the NFL out of the rookie quarterbacks? Who's going to be the guy that's going to have the most success long-term in the NFL? And short-term, I'm going to answer that question now. It is going to be Bryce Young. I say that Bryce Young, in terms of the short term, which is 5 years, he will have the most success in the short term. Bryce Young is actually going to have a well-established team. Carolina has some good coaching. They have the best defense in that division. And I like what the general manager has done in Carolina. So I will say that Bryce Young will have the most short-term success in the NFL. But he will not have the most long-term success in the NFL. Somebody on Twitter asked, do you ever see Bryce Young winning MVP? Well, I really hate to say this, but you're kind of putting the horse before the wagon here. I mean, we haven't even seen Bryce Young play a game yet. Now, I will say potential-wise and talent-wise, I think Bryce Young is good enough to win MVP someday. I will say that in terms of potential, in terms of talent, I think Bryce Young has a good amount of ability to become a really high-quality starting quarterback in the NFL. But do I think he'll be an MVP in the NFL? Do I think he'll be Offensive Player of the Year? It's too early to say. But I do love the fact that is a question because, once again, I think Bryce Young has the best short-term success in the NFL. So I will also mention that when it comes to C.J. Stroud, he's going to be a question mark for me. I mean, this is a guy that I really question, will he have a great career? Will he have a good career? Or will he have kind of just a mediocre career in the NFL? Will CJ have a strong career in the NFL? Well, here's going to kind of be my answer in a roundabout way. I believe that in terms of CJ Stroud, I think that he will have a good start to his career in Houston. I believe that he will be a franchise QB in Houston. He'll probably be one of the best quarterbacks that Houston Texans have ever had in their career. I mean, keep in mind, they had Matt Schaub, they had David Carr, they had Deshaun Watson. They've had some good quarterbacks in their career. But I've always wondered, will CJ have the long-term stability to be in Houston? Will he be able to actually be a good solution for them? And the way I'm going to answer this question is kind of in a simple but roundabout way. I think that CJ will have a good career that will be 2 contracts long. I think CJ will prove enough in his rookie contract to get a second deal. But then after that second deal, I think that they will move on from him. I'd say that he would be there for probably 7-8 years in Houston. And then after that, he would then move on, go to another team, be there for a couple of years, and then he would be kind of a journeyman towards the end of his career. So, to simplify it, I think that when it comes to CJ, I say he could be a Pro Bowl quarterback. I think his ceiling is that he will be a Pro Bowl quarterback. He will be a franchise quarterback in Houston. I think he'll get a second contract after his rookie deal, but I believe that's his ceiling. I don't know if he will be much after that, but I think CJ out there in Houston, he will be a second contract quarterback. As long as he doesn't go to Noma Sox. Thomas, you know what? You are a good friend of mine. You've always supported the show, by the way. I always appreciate that. All right, so I've mentioned that I think CJ Stroud, he will be a Pro Bowl quarterback. That's going to be his ceiling. I say that Bryce Young will have the most short-term success out of all the rookie quarterbacks in the NFL. Now let me get to Anthony Richardson. Let me get to a guy that's very interesting, AR5, because in terms of talent, he has the most upside in terms of being a project. All right. I say that in terms of Anthony Richardson, in terms of AR5, he has the ability to become a great quarterback. He is someone that I say has the ability to be a multi-time Pro Bowler. And I'm being dead serious when I say this. I think if AR5 turns out to be the guy that they hope he can be, he might even lead the NFL in touchdowns one year. All right, that's how good AR5's ceiling is. All right, Anthony Richardson, he is somebody that has the potential. He has the ability to be a great quarterback. My problem with him is, will the Indianapolis Colts run him into the ground? Will Anthony Richardson be tossed to the wolves and be eaten up before his talent eventually arises? And before anybody says, will the Colts actually do this to him? They've already done it before. Does anybody remember Jeff George? Does anybody remember what happened to Peyton Manning at the beginning of his career? Does anybody recall what they did to Andrew Luck a few years ago? They absolutely ate them alive and pretty much forced them to be out there way too early and not seasoned enough in the NFL. So when it comes to Anthony Richardson, he has a high ceiling. And I'm going to say his ceiling, similar to CJ in Houston, I think Anthony Richardson could be a multi-time Pro Bowler in the NFL. I think Anthony Richardson, AR5, he could be a franchise quarterback in Indianapolis. But he also could not get past his first contract and the Indianapolis Colts run him straight into the ground. It just really depends on what he becomes. You know, it really depends on what happens to him as a quarterback, what Indianapolis does to him as a person. So, talking about the main quarterbacks here when it comes to the NFL, when it comes to rookie quarterbacks, well, now let's get down to guys who they have some potential. You know, they were drafted in the second round, drafted in the third round, fourth round. They have some potential, but we're going to have to wait and see how they do as a unit. Now, the first person I'm going to mention here is Will Levis out in Tennessee. And I'm going to say when it comes to Will Levis, I wish him the best, but I think he will be a backup quarterback, a fringe starting quarterback in the NFL. I say that when it comes to the ceiling of Will Levis, he will be a bottom-tier starting quarterback, or a great backup quarterback in the NFL. I say Will Levis, in terms of talent-wise, he is a guy that could be in the NFL for a decade, maybe be in a decade plus, but he will not be a franchise quarterback. Will Levis did not show at Kentucky that he could be a franchise QB. He did not show the talent, and he did not show any reason why he could be a star player in the NFL. That's why he went to round 2, by the way. So his ceiling in terms of Will Levis is he will be a bottom tier starting quarterback and or a great backup in the NFL. That's what Will Levis is going to become. Now, the other quarterbacks that were taken in the NFL draft, there are plenty we could talk about here on the show. But there are 2 I have to mention because one of them is who I have as the best long-term success in the NFL. This is a quarterback who I say could show some really good potential in the NFL, and he is someone that I believe will have the best all-around future in the NFL. So, the guy I got to mention beforehand, and that is Hendon Hooker, who is out there in Detroit. Okay, Hendon Hooker out there in Detroit, out of Tennessee. They did get him in the draft, but I also have to mention when it comes to him, there has been a lot of question marks about what he will be at the NFL position. What will he do in terms of an actual NFL player? Well, let me tell you what I see Hendon Hooker becoming. I say that Hendon Hooker will be Kellen Moore 2.0. And for anybody who's wondering what I mean by that, let me explain what I'm saying. I think Hendon Hooker will be a good backup quarterback in the NFL. Hendon Hooker, he has the smarts. He is somebody who did really well in college. But let's be real, he's 25 years old. He was one of the oldest quarterbacks in this draft. Hendon Hooker is going to be a backup quarterback at best in the NFL. You also have to keep in mind that he was injured heading into the NFL draft, him getting hurt his final year at Tennessee. So what I see Hendon Hooker becoming is a Kellen Moore, a college football legend, a guy who Tennessee is going to love forever. He's going to play a few years in the NFL. He'll maybe even get a start or 2 in the NFL. But at the end of the day, Hendon Hooker is going to be a Kellen Moore. He's going to be a guy who's going to be remembered for his college football career. He is someone who a lot of people are going to love talking about, back to his good old days at Tennessee. And hey, who knows? If he has a good enough record, enough references in the Detroit Lions organization, maybe, just maybe, he could be their quarterback coach and then become their offensive coordinator. And then eventually become one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL and get hired to go someplace else. And maybe, just maybe, be a hot candidate to be a future NFL head coach. I'm not going to go that far, but I will say that in terms of Hendon Hooker, he was a fantastic college quarterback, but his ceiling is Kellen Moore. His ceiling is a backup quarterback in the NFL, but a college football legend. And the final quarterback I'm going to mention, and the guy who I think will have the most long-term success in the NFL, and I'm talking about the guy from Las Vegas, the guy coming out of Purdue, somebody who I have a lot of high expectations on, and someone who has not disappointed at all. And of course, I am talking about Aidan O'Connell out there in Las Vegas. I mean, this is a guy who has really impressed your host, Ian Rakelli. This is Aidan O'Connell over the last couple of weeks has shown everyone around the world what he can do. He has shown people all around the world that when it comes to Aidan O'Connell, when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders, he might not just be a starting quarterback in the future. Well, if he keeps performing the way he is, he might be the long-term quarterback in the future of the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but this is a guy in Aidan O'Connell who has done incredibly well in week 1. He was somebody who did incredibly well out there in Las Vegas. So I'm going to put this on record right here, right now. Bryce Young for Carolina will have the most short-term success in the NFL. But the rookie quarterback who will have the most success in the NFL is going to be Purdue quarterback, Las Vegas Raider, Aiden O'Connell. He will be a guy who is not only going to be a franchise quarterback, but Aiden O'Connell is going to end up becoming one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Aiden O'Connell is going to change around the Las Vegas Raiders franchise. They're talking about maybe getting a quarterback next year. I say put a pause on that. They already found their quarterback in Aiden O'Connell. So I will say to everyone watching around the world, Aiden O'Connell will have the most success out of all the rookie quarterbacks in this draft. And Aiden O'Connell will turn around the Las Vegas Raiders. So as we have had a fantastic show here on the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. And I do want to very quickly acknowledge a few people. I want to talk about a few people that have really helped this show out. Have really made the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio what it is. And first, I have to start out with the person who helped me create this show, and that is my family. I have some very loving parents, two people who really have helped me this whole entire time. And they've always been supportive. I've always been in the chat. I've always watched every show. So I have to give a moment of respect to my parents for absolutely having the, helping me with the grind. That's the only thing I can say, really helping me with the grind. So I want to say appreciate my parents there. I also have to say Sal Tuzolino. He does his own show, Sports Circus. He did AMP TV. He brought on the Sports Circus, the Sports Angle. He brought me on Sports Circus a couple of times. But yeah, Sal Tuzolino, he actually helped me create the foundation of the show about 4 years ago. So that was fantastic. Do want to give a lot of respect there. Guy Dawson, obviously, for having me be on this network, for giving me the opportunities on PRConnectionsRadio.com. Also, Dana, by the way, she's always in the background, always helping out. I have to give a lot of respect to her as well. I also have to say to all of the people who have been guests on this show, regardless if you are a Super Bowl champion, World Series champion, if you did your own show in the past, you want to come on and promote it, regardless of what you did, I always had a lot of respect for you. So for everybody who has been a guest on this show, I highly respect everyone who has been on. And I also want to say to everyone who has been watching the last 4 years, this has been an incredible show. Over 700 episodes the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio has been. And I will say to everyone watching in Las Vegas, the greatest city to ever exist, my hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada, I definitely appreciate everybody's support on there. And you know what? I'm not going to close the door on this show. Anything can happen. You can get a phone call tomorrow and that whole thing can change. But here's all I'm going to say. This show has been amazing. Vegas Hockey Hub, that's going to still keep on going. Go to Vegas Hockey Hub Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Definitely go support Vegas Hockey Hub. It's been an amazing 10 months we've been doing Vegas Hockey Hub, getting into season 2 now of Vegas Hockey Hub. And doing 4 seasons of the Sports Angle has been incredible. And I have my utmost respect to everybody who has helped me with that. And I will say for everybody on PR Connections Radio, go support all the shows on there. People like Brian Gardner, Cozy Stone. You have Edgar Rodriguez, Love of Business. So many amazing shows on there. You got Sandra. So many great shows. I can't think of all of them. But yeah, to everybody watching around the world, I do appreciate everyone who's been watching the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, Vegas Hockey Hub, that's always going to be around here on PR Connections Radio. And I will say, continue watching sports. Go support your local sports teams. And I will say, see you soon.